What's up, everybody? Dan Matheny here. I hadn't done a video in a long time. I had been busy, and it's been one of those things where I just hadn't had time to really talk about my discoveries or anything. I talked about, the shell that I started using about a month ago. It was the MKSH shell, which is great if you use FreeBSD and Linux, because a lot of things are compatible, and you can run any bash script through the Korn shell, basically, as far as I've discovered through scripts I've tried and played with, and all that jazz. But anyway, I'm going to break down basically the operating systems that I feel like are the best, because I played around with a lot of operating systems here. But and this is just my opinion. Your mileage may vary. You may use something that you like better, and I'll just go ahead and break it down really quick. I think my favorite to use on a daily basis, I've come to, which I'll use Arch, I'll use FreeBSD, I'll use Debian. Those are my three main ones. But Mageia and Fedora are great. The RPM based operating systems are great. I just feel like with FreeBSD you can get everything to work. You can get your whole desktop to work. You can get newer hardware to work. I had a problem with older hardware, but I was able to get all that stuff to work also. I was able to get my Dell 5567 laptop to work with FreeBSD and all the components. The video, the Wi-Fi, and what I learned with the Wi-Fi in the Dell 5567 is that if you install the DRM KMod driver, it supports a lot of the other devices, and the Intel media driver, I forget exactly what it's called for FreeBSD, but there's an Intel media driver that you can install that supports your Wi-Fi devices for your Intel stuff. And that's what I was able to do with the Dell 5567 to get everything to work for FreeBSD. And I think for me, out of comfort and out of how busy I am, I just like the semi-rolling based operating systems, where it's not bleeding edge, but to where it comes out with new updates, but it's not on the fly. I mean, you have experimental, which is like really raw, which is brand spanking new, and then you have normal bleeding edge, and then you have your semi-rolling, which is testing. For Debian and other operating systems, Arch is mainly bleeding edge, and sometimes you have your experimental and all that. And with FreeBSD it's different, because you have a small group of people that maintain these packages, and you have some solid choices in packages. You don't have as many choices as you do on Linux, from what my experience has been. I could be wrong, and I say that mainly just because I've been wrong before in talking, so I'm always careful with the words I use. But I love FreeBSD. I'm definitely going to follow it. I think what's great about it is its monolithic kernel, because I notice great performance out of video and sound for me, from what I've noticed and played around with FreeBSD, and I think it's a great choice in what's out there. But I'm just thinking, I think if the choices out there now compared to when I got into open source software 20 years ago is completely different. You have so much choices and options out there, but I think I just have my preference and what I like to use, what I'm comfortable with, and that's probably because I did mainline Debian installs as early as 2013, and I think I was just used to the apt package manager, even though I'm used to Pacman. But anyway, this kind of goes to, those are my three favorites. But let's go ahead, if I were to create, and this kind of goes into what I'm thinking about the last week or two. if I were to create a distribution, an operating system, you know, I'm thinking to myself, you know, the Debian repository is the most stable repository ever. You know, yeah, there's weaknesses, and especially there's weaknesses with systemd. I'm not the biggest fan of systemd, but performance-wise, there's not much of a difference between the other init systems and systemd. There is, you know, a performance difference, but for me, it's not a big deal. Just like if you don't have dash linked to bash, you're not going to have much difference in performance. You know, and there's people out there that like to use different shells. I have my favorite shell that I like to use, just because it's minimal, and you can run any bash script with the MKSH shell, and you can run your C scripts with MKSH also. So that's why if you're a user of the BSDs and GNU based operating systems, I think you should give MKSH a try, just because you can run a lot of things with that shell. So I think that everyone after a while just has their preferences after messing around, and I still wouldn't mind messing around with stuff, but I think I've gotten to a point where I'm familiar with a lot of it, and a lot of it is a learning curve, and I had fun with it, and you know, if there's anything, I'll definitely play around, and I like both. You know, I'm someone that has respect for both the GNU based operating systems and the BSD based operating systems. I played around with Dragonfly BSD and OpenBSD, and Dragonfly is cool because you can use FreeBSD ports, their own ports, and you have a lot of options there with Dragonfly BSD. Now with hardware, you're going to have some snags there, because I definitely did, and some things have taken a while to work, but that's just how it works with the BSDs. But I think, you know, from what I've heard out of reports of FreeBSD, I mean, and all the other BSDs, is that they're getting better, their compatibility with hardware is getting better, they're really thinking about more of the desktop user in terms of hardware working. And that's where, you know, I kind of think about, if I created an operating system, what would that be? I really love the monolithic kernel. So I'd kind of just do two different variations. I'd do something with a monolithic kernel and a certain package manager. Like, you know, I'd do it the BSD way, but I mean, it's been done before with pack BSD. But, you know, and GNU, Debian, free KBSD, that's been done before, you know. So people have tried it, but there's been stuff on it that hasn't worked out, where it was just for people that wanted to test software and that kind of deal. So that's what that was for, and I remember kind of messing with that a little bit a long time ago, but I've really delved into it for like a month, you know what I mean? It wasn't just like a couple days, but a month of FreeBSD, you know, and really seeing how it works, seeing how, you know, you can install software. Now I can install a package from source and get it to work. Now with FreeBSD, it's a little different. You have to do your research on your different libraries, on how they compare to Linux, and that's how you can get software to work. And there's a couple things to where I built them and I was able to figure out all the different libraries and sources, and other stuff I wasn't able to. But I think next is, you know, maybe developing my own version of what I'd like, if I can. You know, I don't know how it would work if I created a Debian-based Debian testing-based operating system, but based off a different package manager. I don't know if that's possible. I really don't. It'd be cool to have the stable Debian testing repository with the package manager, and then have like a basic init system like RC init. That's my favorite thing about FreeBSD and the monolithic kernel. But you know, I would do some variation like that if I could. And you know, just the default shell would be the standard, but I wouldn't mind if it were the MKSH shell. But I would just have it be bash, just because that's the standard. You know, that's the standard that people use. It's the POSIX compliant standard that people are used to, and I wouldn't mess with that. And that's just me. You know, I'm kind of a little uniform, and that's why I like some operating systems for that purpose, like Fedora and Mageia, the RPM based, because they're kind of uniform-ish. And in a sense, I like that because there's a standard that people are used to, they're familiar once they get started. So I guess for me, in thinking about all this, that's what I'd like to create if I could, if I'm able to. I don't know if I'm able to or not, so I'm still thinking about it. I hadn't been on the computer every day, but I still haven't lost the interest or anything like that. It's just after a while, new ideas of how things work kind of run out. So, and I like thinking about how all that works. But that would be my thing. Basic init system, Debian testing based, but with a different package manager like Pacman. But I've seen people configure Pacman to run off of different GitHubs and stuff, different repositories. But I don't know if you could do that with Debian or not, just because it's based off of apt, and I don't know if you could link that or not to. I don't know if you can link a Debian repository to Pacman or not. So I've seen people link different things to Pacman. That's one thing I thought about, but that would be my idea or concept. And with the monolithic kernel version, that would be more based around FreeBSD, but with a different package manager, and just a different file structure and repository, if need be. But just different options basically for software. But I would just kind of look into that and see what repositories that you could use. But I'd want it to be secure. That's another thing. And there's some loopholes in what I'm suggesting, and I know that. So, but it's just for fun. It was just a conversation for fun. But I think with this topic of operating systems and playing around and experimenting and seeing how things work is fascinating, and I'm glad that I had taken the time to do it. And I still think about these things because a lot of people care about how their system works and how it's run. But in the conclusion, I've decided that those are my three main operating systems, one way or another. I've helped people with their stuff lately. There's a buddy of mine that had a question about auto mount and FreeBSD. I was able to help him out with that, give him all the information I know. I don't know if he completely was able to fix his problem, but I know enough about it now because I messed around enough with it where I know the options and features that I have worked for my newer hardware on there with what I had configured in the RC init system, FreeBSD. But I think I've babbled on long enough. That's what I would consider, for an operating system if I could design one. But that's just my take on it. Anyway, keep on learning and have fun, because those are the two things in life. Learn and have fun. If you're not having fun, then take a break from it. That's it. See ya.